Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Raptor Queens Podcast, the first all-women-led podcast covering the Toronto Raptors. My name is Sarah Khalil. Joining me today are my other Queens of the North, Sonali Sharma, Allison Hope, and Essie Magic. Welcome to this week's episode. We have a lot of exciting news to cover this week. As a starting point, a point of personal excitement for me that made me very happy. Kyle Lowry's mom started following our account on Twitter. I'm absolutely thrilled and over the moon about it. I told all of my friends. I had to post it on Facebook. In any event, that was a big deal. Thank you so much for following us. Thank you generally to all of our listeners and everyone that's supported us. It's been a really pleasant and fun journey so far. And, you know, we decided today it would be good to give a special shout out to some of our siblings who have also been involved in the creation of this. My sister, Sophia, is the one who designed our logo. You may have noticed last week that we added music to the beginning and the end of our podcast for the first time. And that is courtesy of Essie's brother who produced that music. So thank you to our siblings for being involved and helping us launch and become part of Raptors sports media history. This is very fun, and we're just thrilled to get to continue to be a part of this. Also, in very exciting news today or this week, the Raptors are fully healthy for the first time all season. We got all of our guys back, and I don't know if you can hear it in my voice. I'm absolutely thrilled about this. So this week we got Norman Powell and Marc Gasol back in our game against the Spurs. We had, I got that wrong. Norman Powell and Pascal Siakam came back in the game against the Spurs. We had Marc Gasol come back in the game against OKC. And just yesterday, we had Fred VanVleet come back in the game against Minnesota. So that was wonderful. And I'm going to start with a big picture question in honor of everyone who's returned. For everybody, each of you have your own take on this. What did you miss the most from these guys, or any one of these guys, that you're just so happy to have back? I'll start because I have a clear answer. The thing that I miss the most is Marc Gasol's outlet passing. I completely forgot how fast he is off the rebound, how quick he turns around, how strong his pass is, and how he initiates the fast break effortlessly, so quickly. I'm so happy. I mean, everything about Marc Gasol is great, but that one particular skill, I kind of forgot about it, and seeing it back this week, I'm just so happy. So anyway, that's mine. Sonali, you go next.
Yeah, I mean, it's great to see them all out, and great to see them all walking in all of their fashion in their attire, and seeing Pascal Siakam rocking that Elmer Fudd jacket that he's been wearing recently. But I have to agree with you. Marc really stands out to me, and he can actually make Pat McCaw bearable right now. And so it's just really great to have him out there. I miss you, Marc, and your beastliness.
Totally. All right, Allison.
Well, after that Portland game, I have to say that was probably my lowest point so far this year, but things are definitely looking better this week. And if I had to pick one thing, I would say I'd again go with Marc, but for a different reason, and it's because of the floor spacing. His ability to stand at the top of the paint and make excellent reads. The guy is amazing. So I think next time we play Miami, we're not going to be seeing any more of that zone. That was just soul crushing. So, I mean, among other things, that's what stood out to me.
Okay, that's so far three votes for Marc, or just realizing what Marc brought to the game or brings to the game. Essie, what did you miss the most?
So I think mine partially includes Marc, but I'm just gonna say just more offense in general. Because it was getting really painful to see those fourth quarters where it's like offensive production would slow down, or even in the games where the bench would come on. Like every time the bench comes on, the lead goes away. So just, you know, the offense in general, I mean, it seems like a really simple answer, but it was getting frustrating watching, you know, offensive production go down when the bench comes on, and, you know, us holding on to every single putback. It's like, yes, at least we got a putback on that play. You know what I mean? It was like we were grasping at everything going in. So offensive production.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So the Raptors went 3-1 this week with wins against OKC, Washington, and the Timberwolves, and only a 1-point loss against the Spurs, which again was a hard one because it was a come from behind win for the Spurs. But it was such a relief. That was my experience this week, is like the relief of watching the Raptors with all of their talent on the floor. And it was like it was easy to breathe. Like, it was fun to watch the Raptors when they were healthy, put all their heart into it. But there was just an ease to this week's game. Do you guys notice that?
Yeah, definitely offensive flow for sure.
Yeah. Okay, so again, looking big picture, maybe Allison, we'll start with you. What was your general impression? What are the highlights that you want to mention about this week?
Well, true to the pessimist that I am, I'm going to start with the low light, and that San Antonio game. That was a completely winnable game. And as much as DeMar hurt us in the second half there by going off, I kind of have to be a little bit happy for him. The OKC game, I had figured that one for a loss, and I was super impressed with the way we handled that game. There was a little bit of slippage in the second half, and I'm just wondering, I'm looking back, Steve Adams only played 6 minutes, and he's always been a bit of a Raptor killer before. So the other thing that I noticed was, and I mean, this isn't Raptors related, Chris Paul, that whole story, this is kind of a redemptive year for him. So I've never been a huge fan of him, but this is kind of a nice story. I mean, OKC is doing well, better than anyone thought. The Washington game was just super fun to watch. I think I read somewhere that that's the most number of points that we have put up in a regulation game. It looked like Scott Brooks was really searching for answers. He played a rotation of 11 players, and that was a fun game. And every time we beat Washington, I think back to that 4-game sweep in 2014 to Randy Whitman, who couldn't seem to figure out how to hold a whiteboard. So these wins against Washington are always super gratifying. And the game last night, that was a professional win that had all the potential to be a trap game. We came out sluggish in the first, but then we locked down. So all in all, I think I predicted 2-2. So I'm super happy. 3-1, like, it was a good week.
Yeah. My thing about the Washington game is it was amazing to see the Raptors firing on all cylinders, and also Washington just called in the defense though. So it's a tough game to actually judge and know for sure how good we can be, but at least we know how good we can be against teams that don't play defense. So that's great. Essie, what about you?
Yeah, at the risk of sounding petty, I would like to say I'm very happy that my prediction was right, as I predicted 3-1, and I was right. And also I want to thank Sarah for reminding me that I predicted that, because she at first said she had predicted that, and I was like, no, you didn't. So yeah, just want to say I'm happy about that. But you know what, for this week, I think what stood out for me the most is just seeing how all these guys came back from injury was very, very impressive. Like, Marc Gasol came back like he was thinking, I'm not losing my minutes to Serge. Like, he came back as if he had something to lose. Even Fred came back like, oh no, you're not giving Norm my starting position. Like, it just, you know, it's like they needed no adjustment time. Even Norm has been on fire, scoring 20 plus points every game. He's been back, and they just slotted right in. I mean, the only one who's kind of been lagging a bit is Siakam. I don't know. He always ends up, anytime players come back from injury, I find he kind of gets a bit lost, a little bit less aggressive. And so that happened. But I mean, I think he'll bounce out of it. Overall, though, very happy with this week. I do agree with you, Sarah, though, that it is in the back of my mind that Washington's defense sucks. So I don't want to put too much stock in that. And Minnesota isn't the greatest team. I mean, they're very athletic, though. I will say that about them. And they did a pretty good job getting back on transition D. But yeah, it was just a good feel-good week, I think, just to see all of our players back and see them adapting well and see Nick Nurse's lineups that he's been experimenting with. So yeah, overall, good week.
Yeah, thanks for pointing out that I was wrong about what I thought I predicted. Just so that our listeners know, we have a WhatsApp group, the four of us, and after last night's win, I messaged the group. I'm like, yo, I was right. The Raptors went 3-1. That's what I predicted. And Essie's like, that's not what you predicted. You said 3-1 and they could have gone 4-0 and you went with 4-0. And then she's like, I was right. And then I was like, this is really funny. Because I literally was bragging in the WhatsApp group about getting it right. And then I was wrong. So anyway, it's all on record as well. So you can go back and listen about how wrong I was. Anyway, yeah, it's so good to see all of the Raptors players back. You're right about Siakam kind of being lagging. I'm curious about that. Maybe we can come back to that a little bit later. Sonali, highlights of the week for you.
Yeah, I mean, overall an overly good week. I had predicted 2-2, so 2 losses and 2 wins. I think my losses were the Spurs and OKC because I was just very anxious. I have to say that was a very anxiety-inducing game for me. We went from a 30-point lead midpoint of the game, and we won 130-121. Norman Powell, we the norm. I stand by that. Like Essie said, he's been shooting over 20 points each game, all 3 games. But a comment that I think Essie made in our WhatsApp group is something that I've been thinking about. I don't think we're going to be seeing that high number of points from him going forward, just because Freddie VanVleet is back. And I think that's going to kind of change the amount of Norm we see. But having said that, I still have a lot of hope in sort of who he's becoming. Wizards, you guys covered it. Still OKC, 19 turnovers, and they didn't have Nerlens Noel there either. I don't know. I'm just a bit anxious. Maybe I drank a lot of coffee during that game. Last night's game was, it was great to see. I mean, Andrew Wiggins and his triple-double, right? They're an interesting team. They're not that great. But seeing Freddie VanVleet come out the way that he did, like he hasn't missed a beat, was just incredible. So I'm pretty happy right now.
Yeah. The one thing I would say about both Marc Gasol and Freddie VanVleet is they both look the healthiest they've looked even from the beginning of the season pre-injury. Mark has like a color in his face and he just seems alive. And then when Fred VanVleet first came back, Allison, I think it was you that mentioned you didn't think he was like fully right because his shot was off. And yesterday his shot was it was the best form I've seen in a while. So it seems like maybe this injury stretch, at least for Mark, was almost a blessing in disguise, like getting them the rest they actually needed as we head into the All-Star break and then the finishing up of the season.
I remember thinking that with Fred, maybe it was the knee, but we found out later that he was dealing with a sprained finger. I'm not sure if it was a shooting hand or not. If it was, that would probably explain the shooting trouble.
Yeah. Essie, was there something you were going to say?
Oh, yeah. I just was adding on to what you said that, yeah, you're right. Mark was starting to look like, last year's Mark, Mark that could actually slightly jump and yeah, he was shooting like old Mark. Like it was very impressive. Like his confidence was up. It was just, oh my God, he changed the game so much. So I was just, boosting up Mark.
Yeah, he shot for 6 for 7 from 3 in that game against Washington. That was pretty impressive.
Mm-hmm. And I think he was plus 20 something in that game?
Plus 26. Yes, he was.
Have been so high, like the highest on the team since he came back.
Yeah. And okay, so you mentioned earlier, Essie, that it felt like he came onto the court like he might have something to lose. I'm not going to lose my minutes to Serge. And then we had Freddie VanVleet do the same thing. I'm not going to lose my minutes to Norm. And, we saw Nick Nurse experiment with some different lineups this week. So in the first couple of games, he with everyone back, he went big. So we had a starting lineup of Kyle Lowry, OG Anunoby at the 2, and he's big for a 2. Pascal Siakam at 3, Serge Ibaka at 4, and Marc Gasol at 5. That's a huge lineup, and we had that lineup twice this week. And then we had a smaller lineup yesterday against the Timberwolves, where we had Kyle Lowry, Fred VanVleet, OG back at the 3, Siakam at the 4, and Marc Gasol starting at the 5. So both really interesting lineups. What lineup did you guys prefer? Why? What did you think of these lineups? Let's talk lineups.
Well, so I'm not sure how I feel anymore. And it's because every time I start doubting a player, the player then plays so good. Like, I definitely had a feeling like, and I love Fred VanVleet, but when I found out he was starting again, I was kind of like, oh, are we going to lose some momentum? Shouldn't he ease his way back in? And then he played so good. We did see a little bit of drop from Serge, and I don't know if it's 100% correlated with just the minutes changing or him being at the power forward. So since that they started that lineup, I noticed we've seen some drop in production from Serge. So that's the only thing I'm weary of. I think it's one of those things where we have to, like, Nick Nurse has to do it a couple more times for us to be sure, just because of who we've played against. It's like, you can't, like you said, we can't judge anything against Washington, really. But I will say, I don't know if it's a little bit of a bias, but I'm still not fully on board with the lineup of both Fred and Kyle starting. And I know they both just had a monster game. They were combined, I think, for 49 points, something like that yesterday. But yeah, that's the one lineup I'm still not really on board with, just because they're so small. It's like we went from so small to so big in the starting lineup. So I don't know. I hope to see Nick Nurse continue to test out different lineups and just go from there. And he has said he plans to do that. So I guess we'll see.
Yeah, and I guess it kind of depends on who, like, how big is the other team. So like when you think of like OKC and you think of people like like Adams, and you know, it kind of makes sense to have both Mark and Serge on the floor at the same time. I mean, that lineup to me was really interesting. And I don't know, for like, I hear what you say, Sarah, about OG and, you know, going from a forward to a number 2 guard. I think it actually kind of works for him, to be honest. I kind of like him better in that position.
Well, his production in the games when he played too were some of the best performances of the year, both defensively and offensively. I mean, on defense, in the number 2 role, he's usually a lot bigger than the person he's guarding, so his size really comes out. But then when we in that last game yesterday at the 3 position, he only scored 4 points, and we saw like just a massive drop in production at the forward role. It's hard to tell because we haven't seen this lineup enough to draw any real conclusions, but like, what a stark contrast.
Mm-hmm.
And those like buzzer beaters that OG hit could have been correlated with that as well.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know. I'm really curious because when OG performs, the Raptors perform. Like he's actually a key piece of the team, and when his performance is off, it's when it puts the Raptors in a trickier situation typically. So it's nice to set him up for the win, and maybe a 2 position is the way to do that. Allison, what were your thoughts on the lineup?
So it's been interesting. That was kind of the lineup of death with the size they had. I think it's improvisation. This is what Nick Nurse does best. And I'm always reminded of our bench mob in 2018. And they killed it through the regular season. Dwayne Casey would put them in as a group, and they would come in and extend the lead. And then when the playoffs came, it's like matchup specific. And I guess Dwayne Casey thought he was going to put the bench mob in, and the same thing was going to happen. And then when it didn't, and he tried to mix and match with starters in the bench mob, it just did not work. So I think there's an end goal here with Nick Nurse, and everyone's going to be playing, you know, different roles, and there's going to be different matchups in the playoffs. So just thinking of what Sonali said a couple of episodes ago, she was reminded of the quote, it's 82 practices. So I think that's what we're seeing here. And this is Nick Nurse, the alchemist in action.
We'll see what Nick experiments with. And I imagine, Sonali, to your point, it is a lot of matchups. Who are we playing at any given time? And it's a nice problem to have when any of your top 7 actually are starters on another team. Serge is a starter on any other team, no question. Norm could be a starter on every other team. Fred could be a starter on any team. This is a really good problem to have. So let's talk, now we got our top 7. We're clear about them. Let's talk a little about this number 8 position right now, which currently Nick is gifting to Patrick McCaw, which a lot of fans don't understand why. There's a bit of a discussion between TD versus Patrick McCaw, TD being Terrence Davis II. And I'm curious on your thoughts about that. Who would you give this number 8 rotation to?
I'll jump in. I think the 8th spot probably should go to Terrence Davis. I mean, he's a young guy. He needs reps. And I heard a little bit of slander yesterday about he's just not that good. Well, it's hard to put a guy in for 5 or 10 minutes a game and expect him to develop consistency and familiarity with his teammates. So, I mean, I think it should be Terrence Davis first off the bench.
Yeah, I'm with Allison. Some people who are saying that they think Terrence Davis just isn't good enough. Like, he's a rookie. Are we forgetting he's a rookie? All the mistakes he's making are all rookie mistakes. Like, you see it and you're just like, oh, he's a rookie. Like, that's how I view it as. And in order to have him develop and grow, it's very important for him to get the minutes. And I don't know about you guys, but I see him as a future, like, all-star. And you just see that spark. And when he shoots and it's like literally a swish in the basket, it's like, these are like star potential things I'm seeing in Terrence Davis II. I don't know if I'm the only one, but he's so quick. I don't know. I just don't get when people say that. And I just see so much potential in him. And I feel like we're spoiling his potential by not giving him enough minutes. So yeah, I definitely am for TD2 above McCaw in minutes. And then even I would slot in Rondé as that 9th person right after. And I wouldn't play McCaw, to be honest. Like, I'm very over him, but we'll get into that later.
Yeah, yes, we will.
And I think the reason why I was so hesitant was because I still want to believe in the decision to play Matt McCaw. I've already forgotten his name, Pat McCaw. And one of the things I've been thinking about, and I don't know if it's true, but it's like, maybe he's there to create adversity. Like, he's actually there to suck so that the team can actually, like, if we could beat Pat on our own team as the 8, we can actually do better offensively and defensively, because they're literally playing defense and offense against their own teammate right now. And yeah, I don't know. I just feel like Nick Nurse feels really bad for him because he got fouled and had that horrible injury because of Vince Carter in like 2018, and has like a very non-traditional career in basketball and has 3 championship rings. Like, maybe he's just a good luck charm. I don't know.
That theory isn't bad, honestly. Like, I've heard some other theories. There's one where someone thinks that he has something over Nick Nurse, and he's he's like blackmailing Nick Nurse.
Like, his mom makes dinner for all of the kids or something.
like somebody was like, they're like, oh, maybe I don't know if I can say it on the podcast, but they're just like, maybe McCaw has something hanging over Nurse that he doesn't want revealed, and that's why he's playing him. So that was one theory I heard. And then I also heard that Masai Ujiri must have instructed Nick Nurse to play McCaw more to boost his trade value, just so that he can trade him away. So that's another one I heard.
My only problem with that theory is that I feel like the more that you play McCaw, the less his trade value is, because you keep not very good. So that's my problem with this. I don't really understand that. Okay, and one final comment with everyone healthy. One player we haven't seen much of is Chris Boucher, which for me is the right call, but also a sad call because I miss that guy. Any thoughts on Boucher?
He just brings so much energy, and he's tenacious on the boards. But again, I guess it's matchup specific, and I guess that's our answer.
Yeah, I definitely feel bad for him because he was showing all the signs that on another team, he should be rewarded minutes for that, and it's sad when you see a player do really well and still not get what they should be getting. But at the same time, it's like, he's still not as good as Mark or Serge. So it's like, we can't, choose him over them. So it's just, I don't know. I feel bad for him. It's almost like, I don't want to say that he's better off on another team because I want him to stay with us. But when you kind of look at somebody, it's like, oh, you're better off, being away from me or something like that. I feel like it's kind of like that with him because the energy he brings, and even when he doesn't score that much, just seeing how, the bench, I don't know, we don't call them the bench mob this time, but just seeing how the game changes when he gets on there and he's running and he's, getting so excited after one play. It's contagious to the team, and you can see that, especially during the times when we've been sluggish. So it's a tough situation for him. And he's also one of the players who is slightly older on the bench mob. So he's running out of time to really establish himself. So I wish he could get more minutes for sure.
But this speaks to our depth. I mean, we just have this incredible luxury of having a long and deep bench. Like, we're very fortunate.
And sort of going back to Sarah's point in the last podcast episode is, with all these injuries, we've really had an opportunity to display the caliber of the bench players. And I think Chris Boucher is not going to be unnoticed. Like, he's definitely being seen out there. And I think you're right, Essie. We might have to let him go.
And honestly, like what you've been saying too about he's being seen out there, like even when I hear his name on ESPN, it almost feels like an oxymoron. It's like, you don't expect them to know who Chris Boucher is. So in that sense, I'm very proud of him and all our bench guys who, are getting more attention.
Yeah. And again, in theory, this is a good problem to have. You want this kind of depth. And then we also have this new report from Woj, in case anyone is unsure about who Woj is. He's reports with ESPN. Adrian, I don't know how to say his last name, Wojnarowski, I think. I'm not entirely sure if I pronounced that right. Anyway, he tends to have all of the inside scoop on the trades. He tends to be one of the ones who, drops the news about trades quickly. He's got really good credibility. And one of the things he said this week is that the Raptors are looking to add talent at the trade deadline. So, I mean, that's interesting. We had a discussion last week, the four of us, we discussed what we would do if we were Masai. At the trade deadline, what would we consider doing? I think we had Allison and Sonali both said that nothing would happen, that the team would remain as it was. Essie, you said, yes, there might be a trade, and you were specifically looking for an offensive production player. Is that right? Is that what you said?
Yeah. And, this kind of just adds to what you guys are saying about our depth. It's like, we have so many players that it's like we could package them all together and get a really solid, ISO scorer or a dribble and shoot type of player. And this is kind of why I'm still not fully on board on the Norm train, which I said in our group chat, he's kind of on the path of like a Klay Thompson who can dunk. You know what I mean? It's like he still, when I see Norman Powell be able to dribble, step back and shoot, that's when I'm fully going to get on board. But right now, he's still more of that catch and shoot type of player. And I would really love for us to get, a player who can make moves off the dribble, score in an isolated situation, ISO situation, or when the shot clock is running down, or when our offense has gone dry, which happens a lot in the fourth, and we need offensive production. We need a player who can just try and get something. I mean, we've seen Kyle Lowry be pretty clutch lately, but we need more than Kyle because that's not really his main role. you know, it's almost like when Kyle does that, he's making up for Siakam not being able to do it or something, you know? So I'm still, not on the Norm train. And I still do think we need an ISO type of player, offensive player.
I'm going to stick with what I said before. We might be sellers. I can't see us being buyers like at the deadline unless there's a buyout piece that comes later in the year. I think that's at some point after the trade deadline. I don't know what would be out there for buyout prospects, but it's for sure this is going to be interesting to see.
And to add to that too, I agree. This year is not as easy of a year to get that type of player. Prior to the season, my number one wish was someone like a Bradley Beal. And then he went and signed that extension where everyone was like, what are you doing? Why do you want to be on a losing team? Like, I don't know. So now he's out of the picture too. But he was like my number one. I felt like by mid-season, he's going to be, you know, miserable, and maybe they might look to trade him. And I know they didn't want to trade him at all. Apparently they were turning down all calls in the summer for Bradley Beal. And then I don't know if you guys saw his post-game interview. I think it was like 2 games ago or something.
Yes.
It was like miserable. And I was, dude, why did you sign that extension? I mean, I know why he did it, because he's like, you know, as they say, secure the bag. So he wanted to, you know, lock in the money. He didn't want to end up like Boogie Cousins or somebody if he gets an injury or something. So I see why he did it, but it's almost like, I don't know, maybe I'm being more selfish on my side because I wanted him on the Raptors.
Well, this is like Carmelo Anthony signing with the Knicks and then, you know, being petulant that they weren't winning. I mean, it was entirely foreseeable.
Exactly. And it seems like the problems with the Wizards are foreseeable as well. So it just made no sense at all. It reminds me of when Ice Cube made that quote about when Kawhi Leonard went to the Clippers and he was like, why would you want to be a loser or something like that? It kind of reminds me a bit of that quote. So, except, I mean, in the Kawhi case, obviously he was going to a really good team still. But so it just, anyway, I wanted Bradley Beal, and now there's not really that big of a crop that we can go for.
I think what ends up happening is Masai makes a statement either way. I think if he does make a trade and we acquire some deadline and acquires some deadline. Yes, that's a sentence. If he does make a trade to acquire talent at the deadline, I think the statement is, hey, Raptors, we're making a run. Let's see what we can do this year and let's see how far we can go. And if he doesn't make a trade, I think his statement is basically, it's like walking into the locker room and being like, I believe in you guys so much, and I've seen everything that you've done this year. Give them hell, surprise them. Let's go. So, I mean, I think Masai believes in this team. What did he say? Believe in yourselves. Believe in this city.
You know what? I think that Masai Ujiri is thinking just like me. And I think he's extremely smart. Not to say I'm extremely smart. That's not how I meant it. But any problems we are seeing, Masai Ujiri likely sees it too. You know what I mean? And
before us.
Yeah, and even before us. Like, he's 10 steps ahead of us. So I feel like if we don't end up doing a trade, it'll be because he was unsuccessful in finding the right trade, not because he didn't try to do a trade.
I think we need Masai on this podcast is what we need.
Yes.
Essie, all I hear in what you're saying is you just underestimating this team. That's what I hear, is that you are not valuing this team the way they deserve to be valued, and you are just not believing in them enough.
Trust me, I love this team, but I also am a realist. And you know what? It's blame it on ESPN and TNT. They've all gotten in my head, and they sometimes skew my view of the Raptors. But I'm just being realistic, you guys. I'm just being realistic. Like, I know it feels good to win these regular season games, but I genuinely feel like the Raptors style of play right now, as it stands, is built more for regular season, not the playoffs. And I'm thinking about the playoffs.
All right. Let's see what happens at the trade deadline. We will come back to this conversation and compare notes and find out who on our team should replace Masai Ujiri as the next president of the Raptors. We will do that in a future podcast. Let's then move to our next segment, which is our weekly King of the North. You guys, we have so many players to choose from. It's fantastic. Who this week deserves to be crowned as the Raptors King of the North? Let's start with Sonali.
So my King of the North this week was Norman Powell. He had an incredible week. I think we've spoken of all the stats. He had 3 games with over 20 points in each game, and he was unwavering. He was also my King of the North last week when he was on the bench. So I just want to say that my premonitions were right.
Okay, I'm going to hop on top of that because my King of the North is also Norman Powell. When he first came back that first game, I don't know if y'all saw that I tweeted, I'm all in on Norman Powell. Like, I'm just all in on this guy. I think he's actually like our new clutch shooter, clutch offensive guy. Anyway, he played fantastic. He didn't miss a beat. And the thing that actually takes it over the edge for me is not necessarily his numbers, but like I feel like this week what he proved is that the breakthrough in his level of play that we started to see before his injury is now actually his new normal. And that's why I'm picking him. Like, I just think we have a new floor for what he brings to the Raptors game or to the Raptors team. And it also seems to me like the game has really slowed down for him. Like, he's always been extremely athletic and he's always been very fast, but sometimes it occurred like he was out of control about it or didn't know when to turn on the jets. And now it seems like he's really just like harnessed his game. He knows how to use it and he's bringing that. Norman Powell, King of the North for me. Thanks, Sonali, for just giving me the segue to go on a rant. I'm really happy about it. Allison, who's your King of the North?
I'll say that I'm 80% in on Norm, and I also picked him for my King of the North this week.
Woohoo!
There was no rust. I mean, he stepped up where he left off before he got hurt. And I like, aside from the 20 points a game and the hot 3-point shooting, except he didn't shoot so well last night from 3. I think he was 1 for 5 and then 8 of 15 from the floor. The steals. He's just so active and he's got such a quick first step. So King of the North for the week, Norm Powell.
All right, Essie?
Yeah, so he's my King of the North too. I never thought I would say it, but yeah, Norman Powell is my King of the North.
I'm shocked.
Like, actually shocked.
Did you when you said the new normal, was there pun intended there?
Of course.
Yeah, so anyway, he's just been making such good decisions too. He's being very efficient. It seems like his basketball IQ has like radically increased from the guy we saw before. It's like you can tell when somebody's made an effort behind the scenes to change his game. And I think he's definitely done something, whether it be watching more film every day, studying, learning. He's done something for sure. And so I have to commend him. You know, he's just played so good. And I never thought he would be at this place from the Norm I saw earlier in the season. So I'm so proud of him. And it just makes the decisions a lot tougher, you know?
So it's really interesting that none of us picked Marc Gasol, given how that was the thing we missed the most at in the earlier portion of the podcast. But yeah, Norm was that good that we picked him over Marc. Also, I don't know if you guys noticed this, but Norm got a haircut and Marc got a haircut before they got injured. And that was when their game just like shot through the roof and they both still have that haircut. So I'm also going to give an honorary King or Queen of the North or whatever of to whoever's cutting their hair, because now they're great. Okay, let's move to the next segment. Maybe a bit harder, at least it was harder for me this week. This is our court jester of the week, the player that, I don't know, either something that was really funny, it could be that, or it could be someone that we think needs didn't quite show up how we might expect, needs some improvement, whatever that might be. Let's go in reverse order. Essie, who is your jester of the week?
Well, I am going to say that I don't know how you had a hard time choosing, considering that Patrick McCaw was on the court. He's my court jester because, oh my gosh, honestly, this week for him was just so frustrating for me. Like, the moment I knew for sure, like the nail in the coffin, that he was my court jester was there was this one play yesterday where he went right under the net. It was like in the fourth quarter, it was like 4 minutes left, and he could have just done a reverse layup. Nobody looked like they were going to challenge it. And he just passed it up and passed again. And then there was another play where even Kyle Lowry was telling him, dude, you got to shoot. It was like a 3 or something. And it's just, oh my gosh, his offensive production for me is just not good enough. This week, he had only 2 points against the Spurs, 6 points OKC, 2 points Washington, 2 points Minnesota. And it's just like, you got to score more for the amount of minutes you're playing. Like, even on the season, he averages less points than Rondé Hollis-Jefferson on more minutes. And Rondé was meant to be our lowest production, like offensive production player. And he's even averaging less than Rondé. It's just not good. It's really bothering me now. So anyway, I don't want to go in on him too hard because I feel like I've gone in on him quite enough. So he is my court jester of the week.
Okay, super clear. Allison, who is yours?
So same thing, Pat McCaw, playing 20, 25 minutes a game, and he's getting 2, 2, and 2. He was team worst minus 18 against San Antonio, a team worst minus 5 against OKC. And I think the thing I'm noticing is for a guy with this lateral quickness and, wingspan, he gets beat off the dribble a lot. He was beaten off the dribble last night. I can't remember by whom. So I'm not used to seeing a player with such supposed quickness, like, be treated like a pylon. Like, he's just lacking anticipation. I'm not sure, but a player, a shooting guard should not be beaten off the dribble like that.
Agreed. I saw a couple plays. He was just blown by. I don't remember which player it was on Minnesota, but just blow by him.
Yeah. Okay, Sonali.
I'm just going to plead the fifth with this one and go with the other two. Pat. Unfortunately, I was hoping to do the McCaw more, but I don't think I'll get that in a lot anymore.
A sad moment for at least my dad. It's one of his favorite parts of listening to the podcast is hearing you do that. So it's unfortunate. Okay, Essie, so you said, I don't know when this is hard because Pat McCaw is playing. Okay, I'm trying to keep this interesting for our listeners. And if our court jester every week is going to be the same guy, then what do we do about this?
In all fairness, I said Kyle Lowry last week for his field goal percentage. So I've been switching it up.
Okay, well, I'm going to do my little interesting way to, or whatever. I'm going to do something to spice it up a little bit. I think court jester might be a little bit too harsh, but I will say I think Pascal Siakam has had a slow transition back into the game. Oh. Now, I love Siakam, and I have loads of, grace for this period as he comes back in, and especially just because generally the Raptors are figuring out what they look like healthy. And it's interesting that our number one guy doesn't actually need to be the number one guy in order for us to win games, at least not against the teams that we played this week. I still feel like Pascal is really figuring out his role, and I'm curious to see how much more he's going to grow. I don't actually think he played poorly this week, just maybe not what you might expect given that he's our number one player. Number of touches, number of points. He's felt like he just had a very quiet week, and that's my commentary on that one.
Yeah, I kind of, Sarah, I agree with you, and it's just it's interesting how all your comments are kind of turning into weird puns in my brain. But yeah, when you go from a growing injury, the growing pains are very. I think they're a little bit harder than some of the other injuries that have been on the squad.
Oh, Sonali, what you bring to our podcast is so much wordplay. I love it. Thank you. Essie, you had something to say about this.
No, I was just saying I'm very shocked that you chose Siakam as our court jester of the week. I just didn't expect that.
Like I said, I think court jester might be like a harsh way to put it. It was just a quiet week for him. That's more what I mean.
I just thought about something Serge always says and about fashion, and he talks about things being either drip or art, and maybe Serge is just having like a drip week.
Do you mean Siakam?
Oh, sorry, not Serge, Siakam. Yeah, you got what I was saying.
Okay, well, that's a nice segue into our next segment, which is the tea time segment. So Sonali, first of all, you have to explain what he means by drip or art, because I don't know what you mean by that. And then after that, just take over on our Raptors tea time. Go for it.
Since we're misquoting people on this podcast today, I don't take me literally for this. I've done 0 reference checks, but I've been following his TikTok account and I've been following all these other younger guys. And there was a segment where someone was wearing, just like a snippet from his Avec class fashion show that he does, and he saw one of the photographers or someone in a shoot wearing 2 different types of socks, and he just kind of said to him, "Oh my gosh, that's so drips." So I'm assuming it's a reference to coffee and how drip coffee is not like, an espresso or Americano or a cappuccino or a latte. So, Serge does art, and so a latte is art, but like drinking just drip coffee, and so that's sort of where that reference I think comes from.
You're totally making that up, aren't you?
I definitely made that up on the fly, but I'm sure, and we can confirm this with somebody, that that's probably where this line of reasoning comes from.
I know he said the I do art thing. That I can confirm. But the drip thing, I don't know where you got that from.
Hey, OG Anunoby has it on his. They all talk about this drip thing. Honestly, go look at it. And I'm sure there's some like listeners out there that can maybe tweet at us if you know what drip is.
I can't wait to find out. Okay. So what other than dripping, what other tea do you have to spill?
Okay, so I mean, the biggest tea this week, I think it's been sort of bombarding all of us. Even I think the Ottawa newspaper had this as one of the top headlines, was this whole conspiracy of like Drake allowing Kawhi to have these calls at his LA mansion. And so one of the things I'm working on right now is like a Spotify playlist for our podcast. And sort of, like songs of the week. So this week's song is going to be Drake's Just Hold On, We're Going Home. The lyrics in that song are, just hold on, we're going home. It's hard to do these things alone. Just hold on, we're going home. And so I think maybe that was sort of like a prequel to this whole situation. Like he's really played a small role in helping Kawhi get home. And I'm curious to hear what y'all have to say about this.
Oh gosh. Oh my gosh. So I think, in all seriousness, I don't know how to go from that to like what I'm going to say. I don't think he knew that, Kawhi Leonard was doing that in his house. Like, I think Kawhi was just staying there, on his own or whoever he's with, and that Drake likely didn't know. And even if he kind of got some clues midway, it's kind of hard to do something in case there's a 1% chance that Kawhi Leonard still plans to come back to Toronto. It's almost like when Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment let Kawhi, they flew him in the private jet over, and then as we found out after, the meetings didn't go well anyway, but like they couldn't be like after, well, we're not flying you back home, in case the 1% chance he wants to come back. So I think it was like that. And like, I will say also too that I think that it says more about Kawhi than it does about Drake, if anything. And this is where, if you're a major Kawhi fan, you should plug your ears, because I think Sarah's actually covering her ears. I mean, the fact that he would use, and this is just adding to the list of sketchy Kawhi moments I've seen. I mean, as much as I love what he did for us game-wise, I have seen a lot of sketchy things that we just always sweep under the rug because we were winning. But the fact that he would use Drake's house for his meetings, knowing that Drake was letting him use the house because he wanted him to come back to Toronto, and rather use it to plot his exit from Toronto, I just think is super shady. I just think that it says more about, it revealed more about Kawhi to me than it did about Drake, because I don't think Drake would do that intentionally, and it was an awkward situation. So yeah, that's my piece on it. I don't think Drake did it on purpose, and I think it shows more of the sketchy Kawhi that we've seen in in history's past.
Yeah, well, you know, that's an interesting take, Essie. At least I haven't heard that one before. Like, it says more about Kawhi than Drake. Mostly what I've been seeing is Drake should probably be fired for being the global ambassador. And I actually don't think that's the right way to think about this. Like, if you just inverse it, like, it's almost like saying, if not for Kawhi staying at Drake's house, Kawhi wouldn't have left. No, like you just can't put causation there. It just didn't happen that way. So I just don't think this is really about Drake at all. And I appreciate your take, even though I am a big Kawhi fan. You're right. I'll give you this one, Essie. You're right. Okay, let's move to our Around the League segment. And let's start with one question being posed is, which non-Raptors player are you the most impressed with this season? Zanali.
Gosh, I am in love with Shea. From OKC. I mean, he's from Hamilton. He's a Canadian, and that triple-double he got against the Timberwolves on Wednesday, I mean, 20 points, 20 rebounds, 10 assists. I think he's in a league of his own, and we are going to see so much of this guy, and he's going to be a Hall of Famer one day. He's just so incredible. I just admire this young buck. I think he's only 21 years old. And so I'm really excited to see him hopefully play in the Canadian Olympic qualifiers this June, happening in Victoria, British Columbia. Holler for the West Coast. So he's sort of the player that I'm most impressed of in the league this week.
Okay. Essie, what about you? Yeah, and coincidentally on the OKC trend, and Allison briefly touched on this earlier, but I chose Chris Paul as the player I'm most impressed with this season, just because what he's done with Oklahoma City. Nobody expected them to be where they are. Nobody expected them to be a playoff team. And right now they're currently 24-19. And he's just been an awesome leader. Like, he's changed it. That's what happens when you try to read notes when you have bad writing. So he's changed the offensive flow of the team. These young guys are all getting better offensive opportunities. And I think he's also partially, responsible or has heavily influenced the growth we've seen or the jump we've seen in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander as well, because what I've heard is that he's learning a lot from playing with Chris Paul as well. And even just the fact that he bought the entire team custom suits, and they all showed up to one of the games, was in December, in these fresh looking suits. Even the guys who always show up in sweatpants showed up in these sharp suits that he bought for them. And it just showed that, like, he embraced the opportunity to go there, and he was looking to be a good locker room presence and an impact. And as a veteran player, I just was so impressed, especially because of how he looked getting traded from Houston. They're like, oh, he might be the problem, wasn't getting along with James Harden. So it just really was, I don't know, it's just nice to see. And if you compare it to the situation of like how, Andre Iguodala is, I'm not 100% sure what's going on there in Memphis, but it's similar situation, and just kind of comparing that and seeing what Chris Paul is doing, embracing the opportunity to be a leader and help this team. It's just really impressive to me. And I did want to say, I thought one of you guys would choose Luka Doncic, and that's also the reason that I was trying to be different, and I chose Chris Paul. Although I do think Chris Paul is most impressive to me right now, because there's a bit of a recency bias there. But yeah, so that's my choice of most impressive non-Raptors player this season.
Interesting. Okay, Allison, what about you?
Well, I did a quick breakdown, Western Conference, Eastern Conference. I went with two honorable mentions in the West, Brandon Ingram, who I just realized today is only 6'7". He plays a lot bigger than that, and I think he had a 49-point game this week. And Montrezl Harrell from the Clippers, but I went with Luka. He can do things. He's like just amazing. His 3-point shooting, just these amazing moments, like a Damian Lillard, a Steph Curry, Kevin Durant. He's not the greatest defensively yet, but that will come. And in the East, I went with, Giannis, head and shoulders above my two honorable mentions, who were Bam Adebayo and Miles Turner.
I will say, it just reminded me, I did another vote for the All-Star this week. And because she said Brandon Ingram, I did vote for Brandon Ingram in my second round. So it just reminded me of that. But I also did decide to vote for Fred VanVleet as well, to be a supportive Raptors fan. You guys are confused what I'm talking about. Listen to our last episode where I talked about my conundrum of why or why not to vote for Fred VanVleet.
All right, well, okay, my most impressive player, I don't know, I feel like maybe this is not a surprise. Like, some of the players that you guys have all noted maybe came out as surprises, and it's impressed me most. This is just a player that should be performing and is performing. So I actually went with Anthony Davis on the Lakers. He's playing outstanding and doing exactly what he was brought to the LA Lakers to do. He's averaging 27.1 points per game, 9.4 rebounds. That's already a lot. And he's just, I think he's leading the league in blocks. And, he's a beast. He's just an absolute beast. And you go into the Staples Center and all of these players on the Lakers are big guys, and then there's just Anthony Davis, and he's an intimidating presence, and like there is one thing, and I don't know, maybe I don't want to be mean, but he clearly does actually shape his eyebrows, but then doesn't pluck the middle, and that's a weird one to me. I don't know if you're gonna bother with the shape, maybe get the middle fixed up. Anyway, that's not really about his game. That's just a random side observation. He is the player that's impressed me the most.
It's his lucky unibrow. It's like the Frida Kahlo eyebrow he's got going on.
It's not what I would do, but that's cool. To each their own.
I do want to add a point about Anthony Davis also, is that one thing I'm really impressed by him too is that he's been playing through, not saying that players should play through injury or anything like that, but one of the things that Anthony Davis was known for in the past is the littlest thing and he wouldn't play. You know what I mean? It's he has to be 100% or he's not playing. So the fact that this season he's been, even when he feels a little soreness or something, he's still playing on the court. It just shows a change in his approach to the game as well. So I'm really impressed with him in that aspect also.
Awesome. Okay. There's also some other stuff happening around the league that Essie, I think I'm going to turn it over to you for this part.
Sure. So one of the interesting topics that came up this week, or perhaps I should call it a saga because it seems to be continuing over and over, it is Kyrie Irving and all the problems that he is causing. Well, I shouldn't say that because we can't say for sure, but it's looking like there's some leadership issues on the team. So just to bring you guys up to speed on what happened. So after the game against Philadelphia, he said this to the press, and he, you guys will see what's controversial about it after I say it. But he said, it's transparent, it's out there, it's glaring in terms of the pieces that we need in order to be at that next level. And then he said, I'm going to continue to reiterate it. We're going to do the best with the guys that we have in our locker room right now, and we'll worry about all the other stuff in terms of moving pieces and everything else as an organization down the line in the summer. And I'm going to skip this next part because I want to get to the point where he says the next controversial thing. He says, collectively, I feel like we have great pieces. but it's pretty glaring. We need one more piece or two pieces that will complement myself, Kevin Durant, DJ, GT, Spence, Karis, and we'll see how that evolves. So that was his first thing he said, which was very controversial in itself. And then on top of that, when it was brought to his attention that there was backlash about that, he pretty much just brushed it off. And he said that he did reach out to the rest of his teammates. He said, I reached out to make sure nothing was taken out of context, making sure that guys knew exactly what I meant. And that's the only thing that matters. Everyone can say, if I was in this position, I would have said this, I would have done this. They have no idea because they've never been at this level. So how could you even comment on it? So now we're about to do exactly what Kyrie Irving doesn't want, and that is comment on it. And he also, as an aside, he also said, if it's harsh as a leader or too much for anybody, if you're not in our locker room, stay the F out. It's as simple as that. So it doesn't seem like he's learning very much from, what's happening or what's happened in the past. It seems like history is repeating itself. So what do you guys think about Kyrie Irving's comments?
Okay, so first of all, you invited us into your locker room by making those comments. So, you can say, oh, stay the F out, but, let's just compare this to Raptors culture. What are we not hearing out of the Raptors locker room? Any insider gossip information, what might be going on in the team internally? Like, they have a culture of respect and being there for one another as a team. So this is like, I'm sorry, Kyrie, like, you can't just say, oh, stay out. You actually invited us in. And then second, to say like, oh, you've never been at this level, so you can't comment. Okay, well, we have some of the like top like the historically best players in the league having things to say about this. And like Charles Barkley, I think, nailed it on the head when he said, okay, Kyrie, you were supposed to be that piece. Like, you're saying you need to add new pieces. It was supposed to be you and Kevin Durant coming in to Brooklyn to become a contending team. And now you're basically saying you aren't good enough to be that piece. And like, Kevin Durant, I know he's out this season, the entire season with his injury, but he's arguably one of the best players in the NBA over the past 5 years. The two of them together should be those pieces. And if Kyrie's going to throw his teammates under the bus, I just find this actually really, very poor leadership on all levels. That said, sometimes Nick Nurse publicly calls out his players and then the next game they perform. But I feel like they have like some sort of trust and intimacy between everyone on that team that allows him to do that in a way that they know he's actually supporting them and not dragging them down. So I don't know, but okay, I'm done. Thanks.
Allison, what do you think?
So I just wonder how long it's going to take for Kyrie to wear out his welcome in Brooklyn. I mean, he's a mercurial player. He's immensely talented. When he goes off, he's compelling to watch. But I think he's a bit of a jerk. I mean, that's heartless what he did to his teammates. And I mean, we're starting to see a pattern here. He did it in Boston. It's happening in Brooklyn. And I just think who I feel the big loser in all this is Isaiah Thomas. That guy played his heart out for Boston. He loved it there. He was great. He ends up getting traded and then injuries. And I mean, who knows what could have been. But I just think Kyrie Irving makes trouble wherever he goes. He's kind of like a locker room, I don't know. I don't want to use the word cancer, but I think he's a problem in the locker room.
Yeah. And also too, like, it's one of those things that even if you're thinking it fine, but you don't say it out loud. Like the players whose names were not said, like, how do you think they're going to feel when they hear that you pretty much are saying they're trade bait, they're trade pieces that should be moved? And also to the timing, which is poor. Like, I believe the game that happened right before that, he was like minus 29 or something. And on top of that, Brooke has a better record when he doesn't play than when he plays. So I think he has an overinflated sense of self, impact on the team. I think he's speaking as if he's Michael Jordan or he's some, and he's not. And like Allison said, it's like what happened with Boston, it seems to be happening again. And, you know, you can forgive it only so many times. I mean, when he asked to be traded from Cleveland, everyone thought that was ridiculous because they didn't want to be in LeBron's shadow or whatever. But he was young, so you can kind of like be like, oh, he's young, whatever, he's learning. But then Boston too, and now this, it's like, oh my gosh. And also too, Sarah, what you said, he's meant to be that piece. Like, I don't know if he's forgetting there's a salary cap, but when you have 2 max players, it's expected that, you know, you don't have to fill in much around them because you have 2 max players. So yeah, I definitely think there's something wrong with him.
Yeah, and I think somebody said like whatever happens, Irving will be Irving. It's just he knows no other way, and I think that's goes to all of the points that all 3 of you have made. I mean, yeah, he thinks he's got some BDE, as they say, or too much of that BDE.
What does that stand for?
I'll let you all just kind of look it up after. It's a millennial saying.
And he did apparently make this comment too. I don't know when he said it, but he said something like, the last time this team won, there was an Irving on the team or something like that. He's speaking about Julius Irving, I believe. And so it's like, just like, he just thinks he's so great, you know?
Yeah. All right. Well, okay. Thank you for leading that segment. Let's actually begin to wrap up this segment. So we're looking ahead into next week. We have our preview. We've got the Atlanta Hawks, the 76ers, Philadelphia 76ers, and the New York Knicks. That's who we're playing this week. So I want to hear your predictions. If there's anything in particular about next week that you want to specifically bring our listeners' attention to, let's do that now. Essie, start with you because you predicted correctly last week. So you have the honors of going first now.
I do want to say, I think for the first time ever, I actually have an advantage being in the States because the game time of the Atlanta game is due to it being Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day here. And so it's at like 2:00 or 2:30, which I mean, for me on the West Coast, it'll be 11:30. But yeah, so I was very excited when I saw the time because I'll be at home since we're not going to work that day. But for my prediction, I'm going to go with a wild 2-0. I'm just joking. To beat.
There's 3 games.
I thought you said, I must have missed what you said. I heard Atlanta, the Knicks, and then the third time I missed that.
Yeah, the
Philly.
Atlanta, Philadelphia 76ers, and then the Knicks.
Oh, okay. So
I should have let you have that. You just would have been wrong no matter what.
Well, too bad. Yeah. So definitely think they're going to beat Atlanta, and I definitely think they're going to beat the Knicks. It's Philly that I'm like, I mean, Joel Embiid is out, but I mean, Philly has been, you know, Ben Simmons has been kind of adapting to, it's like they've been creating a new style of not new style of play, but like they're playing differently with Joel Embiid out. It's like they play one way when it's focused around Ben Simmons, and they play another way when Joel Embiid is there. I don't know. Philly is just so inconsistent. I can't like make a decision on this. I'm gonna go. Okay, fine. I'm gonna go with 3-0. I'm going to predict the Raptors to sweep this week based off of the momentum they've been having with the players coming back from injury. I'm going to be confident in the Raptors. I'm not going to look at the other teams. I'm just going to look at the Raptors and just root for them. 3-0 this week.
Okay, that's awesome. Okay, Allison, let's hear you.
The pessimist is going 3-0 too. We're going to win all 3.
Both of us are on the same page.
I'm on your team too. I have 3-0 written here as well too.
Okay.
After watching the Philly and Knicks game, I'm like, we can beat them. We can beat them both.
Okay, well, now I'm debating between going what I really think and just saying 2-1, just so if I'm right, the rest of you are wrong. But you know, maybe it's not about that, Sarah. Maybe you should just be a cool team player. Okay, I think that the Raptors are also going to go 3-0. I think really the only challenge this week is going to be the Philadelphia 76ers. We've got our full roster. They do not. And also, I just think the Raptors are actually, like, this is a game that might actually matter in the long run for the standings at playoff time. So this is a game they actually want to show up at, play with intensity. So if they do that, I predict the Raptors win. So yeah, I'm going to go with 3-0 as well. Okay, everyone, thank you so much for tuning in this week. We'll be back with another podcast next week. Make sure you subscribe on Twitter, Buzzsprout, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, lots of options for following our pods. We also just launched our YouTube channel and our Instagram account this week. All of them are at Raptor Queens or Raptor Queens, and you'll be able to find us on any of those platforms. Be sure to check us out, and we look forward to talking to you all next week. Okay, have a great week. Bye.